The real coup attempt that's happening in our country is very quiet right now. It's being done under the radar. It was spearheaded by Joe Biden, and it's been ongoing for almost a year and a half now, just shy of a year and a half. And the name of this coup, the name of this effort by the Biden administration to subvert our democracy, our election system, therefore our Constitution, the name of this is Executive Order 14019. This executive order Joe Biden issued on March 7th of 2021, and it's shocking that the mainstream media doesn't care about this at all, that we have heard virtually nothing about this significant and unethical and unconstitutional and probably, hopefully, illegal effort by the Biden administration to rig the 2024 elections. Okay, so Biden issues Executive Order 14019 on March 7th, 2021. And essentially, what this executive order does is it does what H.R. 1 failed to do. Now, H.R. 1 was the For the People Act. It was Chuck Schumer's effort to have the federal government take over presidential elections. It would subvert the states' rights to conduct their own elections. It was an assault on the Electoral College. It would have solidified power in the hands of Democrats in the federal government, probably in perpetuity. It would have made it impossible for Republicans to compete at any level, which obviously is what the motivation was behind this bill. H.R. 1 failed. And when H.R. 1 failed in Congress, the Biden administration issued this executive order trying to use the administrative state, the executive agencies, or the agencies of the executive branch of the government to do the same work for him that H.R. 1 had failed to do at the legislative level. Now, the phrase or the way that this was introduced by Biden is that this executive order was supposed to increase voter registration efforts, and that's a very bland phrase. It's a phrase that's a euphemism, because even though it's very bland, we all know that voter registration efforts or get out the vote efforts are always partisan. In fact, it's one of the biggest parts of any president, not just presidential campaign, even down ballot campaigns, is who do you want to get out to vote? And how do you identify these people that you think would be prone to vote for you to get them out to vote? This is a huge operational part of any campaign to target demographics that are likely to vote in one way. And so when the federal government is using executive agencies for election-related activity, even if it's using a euphemistic phrase, a bland, vague phrase like voter registration efforts, there's inherent partisanship to that phrase, because there's inherent partisanship to those efforts. And that's simply the reality of the thing. So what Biden did is he directed 600 federal agencies. Yeah. Can you talk about the administrative states? 600 federal agencies. Do we really need 600 federal agencies? No, we don't. This is what the executive action ordered. It ordered these agencies to, quote, expand citizens' opportunities to register to vote and obtain information about and participate in the electoral process. And this executive order, Biden gave these agencies just 200 days to submit plans of how they're going to do this, how they're going to expand citizens' opportunities to register to vote and obtain information about and participate in the electoral process, to submit plans to Biden for approval. Now, who was in charge of this approval? Who was going to give a stamp of approval to each agency's plan to do this? Well, it was currently is a Biden administration advisor by the name, wait for it, Susan Rice. That's right. Susan Rice it was in charge of approving these plans by these federal agencies, and the plans themselves, wouldn't you love to see that? Don't you think the American people should see what the plans that our executive branch is using to increase citizens' opportunities to register to vote? Well, yes, we should see this. I desperately want to see this. But these plans that have been approved or not approved by Susan Rice have been kept secret. In fact, numerous Congress members have asked for details about these plans. Private groups have filed Freedom of Information Act requests to see these plans, and the Biden administration has given nothing. Not a word, not a document, not a plan, not any indication of what this is. And the problems here, the red flags or the vulnerabilities, the reason that it's pretty obvious that this is an effort by the Biden administration to rig the election in 2024 is because it would be so easy for these executive agencies to tie the federal benefits that they administer to the American people to election activity. And that's illegal. I mean, it's unethical, obviously, but it's also illegal. It's also unconstitutional for the federal government to take over state elections, which is what seems to be happening here. Congress has not granted any kind of authority for these agencies to do any such thing. And you'll remember the Hatch Act. Remember at the beginning of the Trump administration how the Democrats were constantly accusing Trump administration officials and advisors of violating the Hatch Act? And they were doing this obviously just for political purposes, not because they had any real concern that Trump administration officials were abusing their role. But the Hatch Act in and of itself, it bans federal government workers or bureaucrats, essentially swamp creatures, from election activities. If you are an employee of the federal branch of government, then you are not allowed to participate in activities. That's why there's always a separation between a presidential administration and a presidential campaign. And this has been the law for almost 100 years. And the reason it became law is because the Democrats once abused a federal program for partisan purposes. Just a little fun fact about the history of this bill or of this piece of legislation, this law. But the Biden administration, when they're directing these agencies to increase voter registration, these agencies are working with organizations outside the government, non-governmental organizations, third-party organizations. And so the natural question here would be, okay, well, who are they working for? And how do we verify that the organizations that they're working with are nonpartisan, that they're not radical leftist organizations? And the answer to that is we have no idea. We don't know who these organizations are. We don't know what standard Susan Rice, Ms. Benghazi, is using to determine whether or not these organizations have political motivations, and we have no idea how much taxpayer money is being used in this effort. This is the red flags here. I mean, the basket of red flags is overflowing. There's almost no way that this could be done without multiple violations of ethics, of our Constitution, and of statutes that are on our book here.